Fortunately, some are born with spiritual immune systems that sooner or later give rejection to the illusory worldview grafted upon them from birth through social conditioning. They begin sensing that something is amiss and start looking for answers. Inner knowledge and anomalous outer experiences show them a side of reality others are oblivious to, and so begins their journey of awakening. Each step of the journey is made by following the heart instead of following the crowd, and by choosing knowledge over the veils of ignorance, and thus begins their journey of illuminating the darkness.
All information presented in this podcast is solely for entertainment purposes and are not the opinions of its producers. No copyright infringement is intended. Native American tribal elders passed down a legend of 13 life-sized human skulls carved from crystal. Legend tells that these skulls are keepers of answers to the great mysteries of the universe and of life itself. It is also said that one day, in a time when humanity is in crisis and in need, the skulls will be found and reunited to reveal their knowledge which will be vital to the survival of the human race. There are very few legends that cross over cultures and times the way the Crystal Skull legends do. They are contemporarily shared by the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Native Americans, and other indigenous peoples around the world, and in philosophical terms, they are recorded in Atlantean and Lemurian times. These legends have been handed down from generation to generation for thousands of years, which attests to their enduring power. The legend of the Great Flood, which was passed down from ancient times, is one of the few enduring legends that is also shared by most cultures around the world, which scientists now confirm was real. While the event marked an end time for many people around the world, there may be some parallels to the Mayan legends regarding 2012. The more you learn about crystal skulls, the more you realize the power of multiple crystal skulls. There are many cultures that have legends about crystal skulls, sometimes involving different numbers of crystal skulls. However, 13 crystal skulls seems to be the common denominator among most crystal skull legends. Native American Cherokee medicine man Harley Swift Deer Reagan is quoted as saying, "The skulls were kept inside a pyramid in a formation of tremendous power known as the Ark. The Ark was comprised of 12 skulls from each of the sacred planets kept in a circle, with the 13th skull, the largest, placed in the center of this formation. This 13th skull represents the collective consciousness of all the worlds. It connects up the knowledge of all the sacred planets." The basic elements of the 13 Crystal Skulls legend is that at a pivotal time in humanity's history, 13 Crystal Skulls will be reunited to awaken a new era, transforming from the old paradigm into a new world. Patricio Dominguez, Pueblo spiritual advisor, has stated the Crystal Skulls are complete depositories of knowledge, and each skull contains a particular specialist area of information, like a living library. Each skull is like one volume in a set of encyclopedias. And the people who will in the future be able to read the crystal skulls will only be able to extract all of the knowledge from the skulls once they are all assembled together. Of course, the knowledge that is going to come from the skulls is going to be quite unimaginable to our current minds, but that it is definitely going to come out at a certain time all is already foregone. It has been prophesied, but whether we humans use that knowledge for good or for our own destruction is really down to our preparations. Many believe that there is a strong connection between the crystal skulls, the Mayans, and the Mayan calendar that ended in December 2012. While there was a current belief that more than 13 ancient crystal skulls exist, some say 52 or 4 sets of 13. In recent years, the Mayans have spearheaded a grand reunion of North America's indigenous chiefs in an effort to unite forces towards the commonly foreseen future as recounted by the Mayan elders. Back in 2012, a Grand Elder and head of the National Council of Maya Elders said, "The prophecy says now is the time of the awakening. This is your job now, to awaken. The veil of the 9 hells is past, and the time of warning has now arrived. It is time to prepare for the age of the 13 heavens. The time of 12 Baktung and 13 Ahu is fast approaching, and they shall be here among you to defend Mother Earth. The prophecy says, let the dawn come. Let all people and all creatures have peace. Let all things live happily. For the love must not only be between humans, but between all living things," they said. "We are the children of the sun. We are the children of time. We are the travelers in space. May all the songs awaken. May all the dancers awaken. May all the people and all things live in peace, for you are the valleys, you are the mountains, you are the trees, you are the very air you breathe. Now is the time of the return of the grandmothers and grandfathers. Now is the time of the return of the elders. Now is the time of the return of the wise ones. And the wise ones are all of you. Now is the time to go out into the world and spread the light. The sacred flame has been kept for this purpose, and now the time approaches when you will be required to love all things, to love a world that has gone crazy, to rebalance the heavens and the earth. For the time of warning has come to pass, and the warriors of the rainbow are now beginning to be born. The veil of tears, the 9 hells, is over. It is time to prepare for the 13 heavens. The ancestors are returning, my brothers and sisters, and we do not have long. Now is the time that the prophecies will be fulfilled." Crystals are living beings at the beginning of creation. Nikola Tesla said in 1900, "In crystal we have pure evidence of the existence of a formative life principle, and although in spite of everything we cannot understand the life of crystals, it is still a living being." For most owners or guardians of the skulls, myths, legends, and strange tales of skull discovery at ancient Aztec or Mayan sites ring of truth, but some are believed to predate the Mayan civilization or to have been crafted by Atlantean craftsmen and taken to the mainland prior to the legendary city vanishing. Aside from the mysterious origins of the skulls, a mystery of magical powers also surround the skulls. It is said that the skulls possess telepathic and healing powers. I had opportunity a few years ago to actually see a crystal skull and to be near it, and I it's hard to explain, but I felt better after being around it, just being in the room with it. My mood lightened and I felt so much more in balance and at peace, and then actually being close to it. The only thing they had asked was to not touch it, which I can understand that. Being close to it was an amazing feeling. It's indescribable, actually, and I've tried to reach out to a few people that have went, and time just didn't line up. At the Cincinnati Museum Center in Cincinnati, Ohio, there is at one time they had a large quartz crystal, and just the energy radiating off this thing was phenomenal. So that there's something there about quartz that kind of rings true with that. A lot of your practitioners of metaphysical healings, pagan religions, things like that will wear various crystals, almost all times quartz crystals, because of their healing property. And we'll get into that here in a little bit later. Quartz is a hard crystalline material composed of silica or silicon dioxide. The atoms are linked in a continuous framework of a silicon oxygen tetrahedra. I'm not going to get into all the science and stuff, but it gives quartz the overall chemical formula of SiO2. Quartz is the second most abundant mineral in the Earth's continental crust behind feldspar. I don't even know what the hell that is. Quartz exists in two forms. You have the normal alpha quartz and then the high temperature beta quartz, and both of which are chiral. The transformation from alpha quartz to beta quartz takes place at approximately 573 degrees centigrade or 1063 degrees Fahrenheit. And the transformation is accompanied by a significant change in volume. It can easily induce microfracturing of ceramic or rocks passing through this temperature threshold. Now, there are many different varieties of quartz, several of which are can be classified as gemstones. And since antiquity, varieties of quartz have been most commonly used in making jewelry, hard stone carvings, and this was never more prevalent than in Eurasia. Quartz is the mineral has a 7 on the Mohs scale of hardness, diamond being the hardest. The varieties of quartz include Herkimer diamonds, rock crystal, amethyst, citrine, ametrine, rose quartz, chalcedony, carnelian, aventurine, agate, onyx, jasper, milky quartz, smoky quartz, tiger eye, praselecite, rutilated quartz, dumortierite quartz, praise, and quartz is also known for its piezoelectric qualities as well as its triboluminescence. And triboluminescence is a phenomenon in which light is generated when a material is pulled apart, ripped, scratched, or crushed. And remember the old Lifesaver wintergreen commercials with the couple sitting in the dark and says, if you bite a wintergreen Lifesaver, it'll spark. And that does happen. It's kind of cool to see, actually. You just got to be fast about it. You need like a time-lapse camera to see it, and you need to be in complete darkness. Electricity is the electric charge that accumulates in certain solid materials such as crystals in response to applied mechanical stress. Quartz crystals are used in most modern electronic devices, watches, computers, cell phones, televisions, calculators, you name it. So in the, I actually took a couple of pieces of quartz, and I didn't have a camera to do this with, and went into my bathroom. Of course, everybody's bathroom is like the darkest room of the house. And took 2 quartz crystals and just started rubbing them together really fast. And it did start to light up a little bit. And it was really a neat thing to see. I'm hoping to try to here again soon and get a camera in the bathroom with me and get a video of rubbing it together to hopefully reproduce that glow. And that way I can share it with you guys. Because it was really fascinating to watch. It was, yeah. As for the spiritual and metaphysical applications, quartz is believed to improve mental and physical energy, stamina, and physical strength. Quartz also is said to enhance spiritual growth, spirituality, and wisdom because it clarifies thought processes and emotions. It can increase inspiration and creativity. In chakra meditations and chakra healings, quartz represents the crown chakra. Now, according to some, the quartz crystal is neither a solid nor a liquid. It vibrates at 786,000 pulses per millisecond. Its continuum moves faster than light. Its vibration is the axis of the universe. Quartz crystal generator points are extremely powerful for amplifying energy. Again, quartz crystal, the clear quartz actually promotes energy, creativity, and clarity. It's known as the master healer, amplifies energy and thought, and is said to increase spiritual wisdom, promotes clarity of the mind, and aids in creativity. It's also believed to increase wisdom and insight. In chakra healing and meditation, um, it represents the crown chakra and is used to heal, charge, and activate and rebalance the chakra. And I don't care what your belief system is. I do use a lot of meditation for healing, and I have a quartz crystal that I use for my chakra meditations. And I don't know if it's mental or what, but it seems to help some people. So I say if it works, go with it. Some crystal skulls are believed to be over 1,000 years old, starting with the Mitchell Hedges skull, weighing in at 11 pounds 7 ounces. It's made of clear quartz crystal and is sometimes called the Skull of Love or the Skull of Doom. Allegedly discovered in 1924, and its origin is believed to be Belize, and it's most famous for its detachable jaw. The next skull is a Shana Ra, weighing in at 13.12 pounds. It too is cut out of clear quartz crystal. Um, Shannara is authentic primitive looking. It was discovered in 1995. Its origin is Mexico, and they say psychic archaeology used to locate this. I don't know. Next up is ET, weighing in at 11 pounds, cut from smoky quartz crystal. Its origin is Guatemala, and it's named ET because its features made it look like an extraterrestrial being. So that's pretty cool. The rainbow skull, 5 pounds 4 ounces, quartz crystal. Country of origin is Mexico. It's also known as the Skull of Light, and the descendants of the high priests of Inca of Machu Picchu have worked with this skull allegedly. Next up is Ami, weighing in at 8.5 pounds, and this skull is cut from amethyst crystal. Its origin is Mexico, and this crystal skull was kept inside of a vault before its recent anonymous acquisition. Max weighs in at 18 pounds, cut from clear quartz crystal, and now there's two different stories on Max. Some say he's from Guatemala, others say he was given to its now keepers by a Tibetan monk. We'll go into that a little more later. It's also known as the Texas skull, and it is used by Mayan priests for healing prayers and rituals. Next up, we have Synergy, weighing in at 15.5 pounds, cut from quartz crystal. And Synergy's country of origin is, area of origin, is Micronesia. And they say Synergy was made using a real human skull as reference. Next up, we have Einstein, and Einstein is the largest ancient crystal skull, weighing in at 33 pounds, made from milky quartz, and his country of origin is Mexico. Next up, we have Maya. Maya is 5 pounds, cut from quartz crystal, from Mexico, and Maya is remarkable in the way that there are 3 rows of teeth. Next up is just the Mayan skull, 8.71 pounds, cut from clear quartz. Country of origin is Honduras, and its current whereabouts are currently unknown, so it's pretty interesting. The skull is believed to be 100 to 1,500 years old. We have a Mar, 22.17 pounds, clear quartz from Tibet. Tibetan crystal skull was rescued from Tibet by the High Lama, hand carrying it across the Himalayas. So that's kind of cool. The British Museum skull weighs in at 12.02 pounds, cut from clear quartz. Now, its country of origin could be either somewhere in the Aztec lands or Europe. We'll get to that in a little bit. It was reclassified from ancient to old because of the discovery of tool markings. Next, we have the Paris Museum skull, weighing in at 5.60 pounds, cloudy clear quartz. Its origin is Mexico, and the Paris skull is the first significant crystal skull to have been exhibited in a museum in the late 1800s. And last but not least, we have the Smithsonian crystal skull, weighing in at 31 pounds. It is a milky white quartz, allegedly to be from Mexico, and was initially classified as Aztec, but now it's thought of as not even being 100 years old. I wonder what that's all about. Allegedly, crystal skulls first appeared in the late 19th century and are believed to be Mesoamerican ritual objects. Some believe skulls possess supernatural powers, while others consider them to be ancient computers storing incredible knowledge and information and the ability to record everything happening around them. And others believe that they can communicate directly with humans. Actually, most modern crystal skulls are now made in China. National Geographic did a special, and in an attempt to reproduce the Mitchell Hedges skull, and they were successful. It took craftsmen in China 11 days. That was 8 days to cut it and 3 days to polish it. Cutting crystal is actually a very delicate process, and they say the only thing that will cut a diamond is a diamond, and they have to use a silicon dust and water to cut the crystal, it's a very slow process. The water is, of course, to maintain the temperature of the crystal to keep it from breaking from the heat. Now, the craftsman did successfully carve this replica of the skull using modern tools and methods, and because of this, it further confirmed the experts' belief that the skulls were not made by ancient civilizations. In comparison with Mayan artifacts, the skulls don't share any similarities with the artifacts that have been found. Actual Mayan artifacts have more of a flattened forehead. Now, in 2007, tests were ran on the replica. A forensic sculptor attempted to put a face on the skull, and this was done to determine the facial features of the skull to determine if it was in fact a Mesoamerican. Experts believe that the Mitchell Hedges skull, based on the different tissue thickness supporting the claim, um, and when the forensic sculptor actually finished, it was the face of a young European female. So, doesn't sound Aztec to me. According to legend, now, if you shine a light in the back of a skull, rays of light shine out the eyes, and if a person stares into the eyes of the skull, that person's going to die. And a lot of things have myths and legends attached to them. We all know it, but I don't want to take any chances with that. Now, using the Chinese made replica, a university in England conducted some experiments in their computer science department. Electrodes were connected to the replica skull, and EEG revealed that there was no electrical activity, as would be seen with the human subject. A laser was shined through the skull in an effort to produce the alleged holographic images that many claim to have seen. No holograms were produced. Outcomes can be argued that because the skull was a modern replica, the ancient knowledge was not written on this skull. And I tend to agree with that line of thought, but who am I? Now, if one bases the story of the discovery of the Mitchell Hedges skull on mainstream accounts, Anna Mitchell Hedges was not at the site with her father, and that the skull was actually purchased at Sotheby's auction house in London. Until her death in 2007, Anna Mitchell Hedges stuck to her story. And she made some claims that she had dreams about ancient ceremonies and rituals performed by the ancient Mayan when she kept the skull in her bedroom at night. Now, according to the story, in the 1920s, British adventurer Frederick Mitchell Hedges was searching for evidence of the lost civilization of Atlantis. And while cutting his way through the jungle, Mitchell Hedges, his daughter Anna, and party came upon some mounds of stone covered with moss and overgrown foliage, roots, and vines. The party had actually stumbled upon Lubatan, a lost Mayan city. As the story goes, Anna discovered the skull beneath an altar in the ruins of one of the pyramid temples. Frederick Mitchell Hedges allegedly mentions the skull in the first edition of his autobiography, Danger My Ally, which he had written in 1954. However, he never mentioned specifically where the skull was found or by whom. And as he said in his book, it is at least 3,600 years old, and according to legend, it was used by the high priest of the Maya when he was performing esoteric rites. It is said that when he willed death with the help of the skull, death invariably followed. Now, all later editions of the book omitted this mention of the skull. Anna would later go on to state in a letter in 1970 that she was told by a few remaining Maya that the skull was used by a high priest to will death. This is actually how the artifact got its name, the Skull of Doom or the Skull of Death. Beginning in 1967, Anna Mitchell Hedges toured with and exhibited the skull on a pay-per-view basis, so you could go in, pay money, and see it. Between 1988 and 1990, Anna again toured with the skull. Anna also continued granting interviews about her skull until her death in 2007. Anna married Bill Holman in 2002, and the couple lived out Anna's last 8 years in Chesterton, Indiana. And imagine my shock when I found out it was in Chesterton. I grew up in Indiana. I know right where Chesterton is at. When Anna passed on April 11th, 2007, the skull passed to her husband Bill, and Bill continues to believe in the mystical properties of the skull. Now, since Anna Mitchell Hedges acquired her crystal skull, a number of other skulls have come to light as the ancient prophecy states. And while there are hundreds of thousands of crystal skulls throughout the world, legend says that there are only 13 which are believed to hold awesome mystical powers, whose secrets will be revealed when the skulls come together and form a global grid. In 1970, art conservator and restorer Frank Dorland was given permission by the Mitchell Hedges estate to submit the quartz skull to test at the Hewlett Packard Laboratories in Santa Clara, California. From these tests and from careful studies done by Dorland himself, the skull revealed a whole array of anomalies. When submerged in benzoyl alcohol bath with a beam of light passing through it, it was noted that both the skull and the jaw piece had come from the same block of quartz. What was astounding to the testers, however, is they found the skull and jaw had been carved with total disregard to the natural axis of the quartz, which means its grain, its natural structure. In modern crystallography, the first procedure is always to determine the access to prevent fracturing and breaking during the subsequent shaping process. Yet the skullmaker appears to have employed methods by which such concerns were not necessary. The unknown artist also left no metal tools. Dorland could not find any signs of any telltale scratch marks on the crystal, even under high-powered microscopic analysis. Now, indeed, most metals would have been ineffectual because, crystal has a specific gravity of 2.65 and its Mohs factor of 7. So even a penknife is not going to mark it. You're not going to take a quartz crystal, drag something down at something metal. You're not going to scratch it. From tiny patterns in the quartz near the carved surfaces, Dorland determined the skull was first meticulously chiseled into rough form, probably using diamonds, then finer shaping, grinding, and polishing. Dorland believes that it was done by applying innumerable applications of solutions of water and silicon crystal. The big problem here is if these processes were used, then as Dorland calculated, it would mean that a total of 300 man years of continuous labor was spent in making the skull. Now, this is almost unimaginable, and to admit the use of some form of lost technology in the skull's creations, like we have no equivalent today. So, and some people, it could have been smoothed with like we said, the silicone and sand. And this was not uncommon for the Victorian era when the skull was presumed to have been carved. And that's what has baffled scientists, that allegedly the skull cut against the axis of the crystal. And that's, like we said, formed by the molecular structure. And cutting against this would result in shattering. And whoever carved this had a total disregard for that molecular structure. It's like they didn't even care. So the craftsman cutting the crystal would have to be incredibly skilled to cut the crystal against the axis to keep it shattering. And I don't even think it's possible. So he would have to know the exact direction of the stone's axis. Now, 1,000 years ago, you don't have a microscope. You can't look at this. You have no way of determining this. Part of the enigma of the skull, however, doesn't end with just this making. Like the zygomatic arches, that's the bone arch extending along the sides and the front of the cranium, are accurately separated from the skull piece and act as light pipes, using principles similar to modern optics to channel light from the base of the skull out the eye sockets. The eye sockets, in turn, are miniature concave lenses that also transfer light from a source below into the upper cranium. And finally, the interior of the skull is a ribbon prism and tiny little light tunnels by which objects held beneath the skull are magnified and brightened. So that's really, really cool. The skull was taken to HP because HP is one of the leading manufacturers of computers and electronics. And they're experts in the use of the properties of quartz crystal. So tests revealed everything, it was all made, the skull and the jaw were cut from the same type of quartz crystal. And this quartz crystal is currently used in numerous computer and electronic components. The particular quartz is known as piezoelectric silicon dioxide, and this is the heart of the telecommunications, electronics, and computer industries. It is renowned above all materials for its information storage capacity, believe it or not. This quartz is also the material that microprocessors are made from, and HP scientists were able to make the discovery in determining that the upper and lower jaw came from the same block. And they did that through the polarized light test. What's surprising is that while being slightly softer than a diamond, quartz is very brittle. And this again is caused by the molecular structure, which makes the quartz, again, likely to shatter. Scientists at HP actually determined that it would be impossible to carve both the upper and lower jaw the upper cranium, and the lower jaw was such a delicate and such intricate details from a single piece of crystal using modern electric rotary tools without shattering. If the craftsman cutting this crystal um, with the grain, it can be cut. It's a time consuming process, but it can be done as we saw with the Chinese replica, 11 days, 8 days to cut it, 3 days to polish it. And HP scientists concluded that at the slow rate, 300 years. So, confused by this, the skull was examined under a microscope to look for the tool marks, and there weren't any. Hand tools, machine tools, nothing. And one of the team members remarked, this skull shouldn't even exist. So, this statement led to speculation from other observers that these crystal skulls might not be of human origin at all. I'm not saying it was aliens, but quite possibly it was the fucking aliens. Working together in 1996 with the British Museum, Dr. Walsh of the Smithsonian Institute tested the British Museum skull along with some other skulls that could be gathered together at the museum laboratory. However, just as the Mitchell Hedges skull proved a challenge for the team at HP, the other skulls proved to be a challenge for the team at the British Museum as well. 6 skulls were tested by the British Museum in April of 1996, and for unknown reasons, the lab never published their results. But employees at the Museum of Man in London seemed uncomfortable around the Aztec skull. Some people say that the skull moves on its own inside its glass case. There was a skull anonymously mailed to the Smithsonian in 1992. And this was allegedly from the collection of a Mexican general, politician, and 7-term 19th century president of Mexico, Porfirio Diaz, and his skull was allegedly of Aztec origins. However, lab testing determined that silicon carbide or carborundum, a mass-produced 1893 abrasive, was used to carve the skull. Well, okay, but silicone, sand, and water is probably going to make up that same solution. So why couldn't it be older again? I don't know. So the rotary tools that would be used is having, to shape a diamond, craftsmen use water and diamond dust because only a diamond can cut a diamond. And they use a spinning cast iron plate, and it's a very slow and tedious process. I've actually seen it done in Amsterdam. It was actually pretty cool to watch. So I'm assuming that the rotary tools would be the exact same thing for cutting quartz, only using this silicone, sand, and water. Who knows? I know nothing about carving quartz. I do good to carve a turkey. Dr. Jane Walsh is the leading Mesoamerican specialist at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., and she's conducted scientific tests on the crystal skulls, namely the one that was anonymously mailed to the Smithsonian in 1992. It was displayed as a modern fake. Dr. Walsh and many other archaeologists are skeptical about the claims about the crystal skulls, including their age. Now, Dr. Walsh has developed a theory about the origins of the crystal skulls, believing that they may be fakes and made by modern means, made in the 19th century, to meet the demand for ancient antiquities. However, some say Dr. Walsh didn't have any proof to support it. In 2007, Dr. Walsh examined the replica of the Mitchell Hedges skull, and the replica, it really impressed Dr. Walsh. She did a tool mark comparison between the replica and some actual impressions she took from the actual skull, and she stated that they matched. The microscopic analysis proved that the Mitchell Hedges skull was also machine cut. Dr. Walsh did note that the original was smoother than the replica. So, who knows? Unlike most ancient artifacts, the crystal skulls cannot be carbon dated. Quartz crystal doesn't have any carbon in it. It's composed pretty much of pure silicone. Quartz doesn't have any radioactive elements in its chemical makeup either. the skulls would have to be examined microscopically for tool marks. And it would be the tool marks that would determine the skull's age approximately. They would have to first determine, are these from hand tools or are these from machine tools, and then they could go from there. If they were to be hand tools, then okay, possibly carved by native craftsmen and possibly ancient. Or were they machine tool marks? So are they 19th century European or are they earlier? In a scientific study, tool markings, the indented lines on the teeth of the skulls, revealed that the skull was made in the 19th century using rotary tools. It was also discovered that the composition of the crystal included chlorites, which are found only in Madagascar and Brazilian quartz crystal, unknown and unobtainable in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. It was suggested by the same study that the skulls were crafted in the 19th century in Germany, perhaps at the world-renowned workshops of Idar Oberstein, known for crafting quartz crystal. In 1970, there was another excavation that took place at the site where the Mitchell Hedges skull was found. They found basic pottery shards, and that was about it. And it became a common idea that the skull wasn't found at that site. There are other skulls that have been found. Experts and scientific comparison claim that the skulls were not carved by the ancient Mayans, but by artisans in Europe with rotary tools during the late 19th, early 20th century. And this is the Victorian era, and that's when the occult interest really peaked. Also in the 19th century, interest in Mesoamerican sites increased both publicly and scholarly. So the rise for the demand for these counterfeit skulls, kind of ramped up. And an archaeologist from the Smithsonian, William Henry Holmes, wrote an article discussing that for Science in 1886. Now, of all the testing that has been done, determined that the skulls submitted for testing were all manufactured in the mid-19th century in Europe. And this Victorian era is when that interest all surged, so it stands to reason. French antiquarian, art dealer, and official archaeologist to the court of Maximilian I of Mexico, Eugene Boban, headed up an expedition commissioned by Napoleon III to collect Mexican art and artifacts in 1867. Boban would exhibit his finds and reportedly a collection of crystal skulls at the Trocadero. Boban would later open a shop in New York where he would sell a crystal skull to American entrepreneur George A. Sisson, who in turn passed the skull to George F. Coons. Coons would go on to display the skull at the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Now, in 1898, the skull was purchased at auction by Tiffany and Company. The British Museum purchased the skull and displayed it as an Aztec artifact. Another skull was sold by Boban to French entomologist and collector Alphonse Pinard, who donated to the Trocadero Museum. The skull is now on display in the Musée de Quasi-Bramley. At the 1900 Americanist Conference on Ethnographic Sciences in Paris, Boban stated in a lecture, numbers of so-called rock crystal pre-Columbian skulls have been so adornedly made as almost to defy detection and have been palmed off as genuine. Well, maybe he did the same damn thing with his. And going back to, it's insisted that the skulls are 19th century modern creations, but most, if not all, the analysis of the skulls are incomplete. Numerous crystal skulls have been found throughout the world, but going back to the legend, it only speaks of 13 very specific skulls, and it's believed that these 13 skulls possess the mystical power and all the knowledge. Now, according to true believers, 12 of the 13 skulls have been located at ancient sites and are now held in private collections. When the time comes, the keepers of the skulls will be pulled or drawn to a central specific location, and all 13 skulls will be reunited. Now, an even smaller percentage of believers think the skulls have an extraterrestrial origin, and it's possible, maybe not. We don't know. There's so many things in this world that cannot be explained. The pyramids, the Sphinx, Stonehenge. You know, add the crystal skulls to the list. In 2013, History Channel's Ancient Aliens paid a visit to an aura photography expert, Jamie Jones, Crystal Skull owner Carolyn Ford, and Ford's Crystal Skull Einstein. They, on camera, placed the skull on biofeedback sensors, and once the skull had been placed and everyone had stepped away from it, the sensors began picking up energy. The skull was then photographed, and the camera picked up the skull's energy field, or its aura. The photo showed vibrant colors, and this surprised everyone in the room, as well as gave validity to the stories of the skull's powers. So, you know, maybe it is possible that there is something with some of these crystal skulls. Crystal skulls can be considered a metaphor that reality is a hologram within a consciousness through which we have a virtual experience. Many of the skulls can be considered tools that awaken human consciousness, referenced by the human brain design of the crystal. A crystal skull is a model of a human skull, normally made out of quartz, crystal, amethyst, rose quartz, smoky quartz, citrine, aventurine, praesolite, tiger's eye, chert, and agate. The skulls may vary in size from a few inches to the size of a human skull or bigger. I actually have a very small crystal skull that sits here on my desk, and I've never seen him glow or anything, but I'm sure if I put a light under him or a laser or something like that, he might do something. And for the record, his name is Chuck. His name is Chuck, and he don't give a fuck. The age of a skull can be equated not so much to the year it was carved or the place of origin, but to the age of the crystal from which it was created. Some crystals being thousands of years old, while others are more contemporary. Crystal skulls are most often associated with ancient Mesoamerican cultures, especially the Mayans. Mayans seem to be the go-to when it comes to crystal skulls. And humanity has always been on an esoteric journey to solve the mysteries of its own creation linked to people and objects that are allegedly containing higher powers or can enhance those of the quester, and it's like I've said in other episodes. Man for generations has stood and stared up at the stars at night and questioned, where do I come from? Why am I here? Am I all alone here in this galaxy? So it stands to reason that, people would use something like this. Technology and the internet help move consciousness to that place with great precision, as if it was all part of a cosmic plan. We can sense the truth will soon be revealed about who we are and why we are here. I certainly hope so, because I'm starting to question a lot of things my damn self. The enigmatic crystal skulls have become another tool of divination to that end. Crystal sometimes is thought of having magical powers as well as transmitters and receivers of energy. Many crystal skulls are designed at specific angles, representing a union of sacred geometry, and we're actually going to cover sacred geometry in a future episode, I think. And the nature of the quartz crystal used. In metaphysics, crystal skulls are used for ceremonial work, healing, energy work, and enhancing one's psychic abilities. Used for healing, we go to the themes of self-awareness and creating balance to open one's psychic abilities and to be able to understand the nature of human creation and evolution, and that's normal for human beings. Holding an object to exchange energies or receive messages with it is called psychometry. To find messages while looking at the inclusions within a quartz crystal or any crystal, a crystal skull, is called scrying, and that's a form of divination. If you're not, what's a nice way of putting it? If you're not a pagan or into metaphysics, you see scrying as something evil, and, well, if you see it that way, yeah, bite me. If you see it as evil, you ain't got no business listening to this podcast. I'm going to tell you that right now. There are countless hypotheses that the crystal skulls are a legacy of some higher intelligence or ancient astronauts who seeded the human race. It's possible. There are many theories about the 13 crystal skulls that will come together, and human consciousness remembers its sole purpose and evolves in the alchemy of time. 13 crystal skulls were left behind by a sophisticated Hollow Earth Society, who left 13 master skulls, which contain the entire history of the planet and these people and their relationship to our creation and the future of humanity. Some say the 13 crystal skulls were left behind thousands of years ago by ancient Mayan elders to be found by future generations. These skulls, again, containers of great knowledge and wisdom, holding information about the history of the planet, the evolution of mankind, and above all, our purpose on Earth and our future destiny. The legend says that one day, at a time of great crisis, all 13 of the skulls will be discovered and reunited. When that time comes, the information will be divulged to humanity, who will be ready and willing to understand it. 13 life size crystal skulls are scattered throughout the planet, again, one day brought together, forming a grid matrix that will allow human consciousness to evolve and return to its natural state of light. Some of the skulls are allegedly in the hands of the indigenous peoples, shaman, perhaps, who are the custodians of the artifacts, while other crystal skulls remain in the hands of those who are not yet aware of their importance. 12 people, along with their crystal skulls, will be guided to a specific place when the time is right, most likely the Yucatan. No one seems to know exactly when or where that will happen, though the time feels soon. The location of the 13th skull is most likely unknown at this time. Theories abound, from a link to extraterrestrials to buried beneath the ground, to it will manifest when the time is right, to being hidden by ancient Mayan elders. When placed together, the skulls will form a grid matrix, going back to reality as a consciousness holographic matrix, aligned with the 13th skull, allowing human consciousness to ascend, return to its normal state or being of light. So, that the legends are kind of all the same. 13 skulls, 12 are here. The 13th one is hidden. They'll be reunited, and the knowledge will be released. It kind of reminds me, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. That was the last one before the newest one was released. And if you look at it, that's basically what it is. They, allegedly there's 12 skulls. They find the 13th skull, put it back with the original 12, and the information is released. So, there is some truth behind fiction sometimes. So, looking at the skulls, Max, the Texas skull, belonged to Norbu Chin, a Tibetan healer who gave the skull to Carl and Joe Parks as payment towards a debt. When Joe learned that the skull was of archaeological interest globally, she took it out of her closet to be examined, and Max was found to be ancient. The smoky quartz skull is currently in the care of a Yoki Van Dieten, and is said to have been discovered in 1906 during an excavation in Guatemala at a Mayan temple. Yoki states that the skull has healing powers that helped heal her of a brain tumor. The skull got its name because of its alien-shaped, pointed head and exaggerated jaw with an overbite. So it's a xenomorph from the movie Aliens, right? Don't know. A lot of the aliens I've seen, they, got the almond-shaped head. Much like the Mitchell Hedges skull, the rose quartz skull was discovered near the border of Honduras and Guatemala, and the lower jaw of the rose quartz is movable, just like in the Mitchell Hedges. Then we have the Shana Ra, the Jaguar Man, and the Rainbow skulls, all according to researchers, were unearthed at ancient sites. Allegedly, all of the skulls were tested and found to have been cut against the axis of the stone. So, looking at that, it makes me question, are these just really good 19th century fakes, or are these ancient skulls carved with an ancient knowledge? So that brings us to this. Are the skulls just really a showcase of human skill and ingenuity? Are they keepers of powerful knowledge and wisdom? Are they clever and intricate fakes, as scientists and experts believe? How were they originally crafted? Who originally crafted them? How were they able to cut the stone and give us access without shattering it? And more importantly, what is the actual purpose of the crystal skulls? Were they left behind to save humanity from itself? Were they created 200 years ago as a symbol of man's obsession with the macabre, the occult, and his own mortality? What's your guess? That's all I've got for you tonight, gang. So until we meet again, my friends, keep your eyes and your mind open, and as always, try to stay out of the darkness.